But some pains disguise themselves as pleasure, and none do it more powerfully than lust. Lust is the great masquerade. It dresses itself as desire, intimacy, connection, but behind its mask lies something far more primal, the unconscious cry for validation. Carl Jung didn't view lust as merely physical. He saw it as psychic leakage, the mind's distorted attempt to merge with something it lacks. It isn't about sex, it's about fragmentation. Because deep inside the modern man is a split between instinct and repression, between the body and the soul, between the inner child that craves to be seen and the outer adult desperate to feel in control. And lust is the shortcut, the illusion of union. Without the responsibility of intimacy, it's a flash of connection without continuity, a glimpse of wholeness without integration. Jung believed that behind every compulsive sexual craving is a symbolic yearning. The body becomes a battlefield, the fantasy becomes a drug, and the person you lust after, they're not a person at all. They're a projection. Because the truth is uncomfortable, most men do not chase women. They chase the missing parts of themselves, projected onto women. This is called anima possession. When a man is overtaken by the feminine aspect of his unconscious, instead of integrating it, he seeks it outwardly. He sees a beautiful woman, and he's not just attracted to her, he's consumed by her. Why? Because she carries his soul, not literally, but psychologically. She represents everything he believes he lacks: softness, warmth, acceptance, wildness, radiance. And so he chases her, not because she is her, but because she holds the keys to everything he's repressed in himself. But this chase is never satisfied, because you can't outsource your wholeness. You can't reclaim your soul by chasing a body. And that's the real trap of lust. Lust is not the celebration of life. It's the symptom of a split psyche. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And when it comes to lust, most men are not choosing. They are being pulled by forces they do not understand, by patterns they have not made peace with, by memories, traumas, absences long buried. And in that magnetic pull of sexual desire is a much deeper ache, the ache to be whole again. You don't lust for a woman. You lust for the feeling of completion her presence seems to promise. But here's where it gets darker. Lust, unchecked, becomes addiction. And addiction, Jung believed, is not just a craving for pleasure, but a substitute for genuine transformation. You don't want her body. You want to escape your own. Because within your own body are emotions too heavy to carry. Shame, insecurity, fear, and lust becomes your anesthesia. Each orgasm becomes a reset, a ritual of forgetting. But you can't forget forever. Eventually, the cost of escaping adds up, and what started as pleasure becomes punishment, not because desire is evil, but because it was never understood. You can't transcend lust by denying it. You transcend it by meeting the part of yourself that created it. And that takes courage. Most men never develop, because it's easier to chase curves than confront wounds. It's easier to obsess over seduction than ask, "Why do I feel so empty without it?" And Jung? Jung wanted you to face that emptiness, not to shame it, but to liberate it. Because if you go deep enough into your lust, if you question it honestly, you'll find that the thing you've been craving all along is not sex. It's union, but not with her. With yourself. Let's be honest. Most of us never choose lust. We collapse into it. It grabs us when we're tired, lonely, bored, or emotionally raw. And Carl Jung would say, that's the exact moment your shadow steps in. The shadow isn't evil. It's just repressed. All the things you weren't allowed to feel, the hunger, the rage, the longing, they didn't disappear. They went underground. And lust is often the first language of the shadow. It's the emotion that slips past the gatekeeper of logic and makes itself known through fantasy, obsession, and fixation. It's not rational. It's symbolic. But here's the mistake. We try to solve lust. We treat it like a math problem. What app do I use? How do I say the right thing? How do I become more attractive? Wrong questions. Because the core issue isn't your technique. It's your disconnection. Lust becomes compulsive when we're disconnected from meaning. And nothing makes a man more vulnerable to sexual temptation than the absence of purpose. When your soul is starving, your body will eat anything, and what it often chooses is lust. It gives you the illusion of aliveness, of potency, of being wanted, even if only for a moment. But the moment passes, and the cycle begins again. Swipe, scroll, fantasize, repeat. You are not horny. You are hungry. For presence, for connection, for intimacy, yes, but one that actually includes you, not just your body, not just your performance, but your being. And here's where Jung's work gets even deeper. He didn't tell men to suppress lust. He told them to study it. Because lust is a compass. It points towards something important. Not her, you. When you notice where your lust pulls you, what archetypes, what body types, what personalities, you begin to see your own blueprint, your projections, your fantasies, your unmet needs. And when you pull those projections back, you realize she was never the drug. Your own soul was. She just looked like it. And when you don't know how to connect with your inner feminine, your intuition, your softness, your creativity, you seek it in another. But that dependency always becomes control. Because what you crave, you begin to fear losing. And what you fear losing, you try to possess. This is the root of sexual power struggles. The moment you idolize someone for carrying your worth, you're no longer free. And if you're not free, you're not in love. You're in survival, chasing, proving, seducing, not because you want to be close, but because you fear being nothing without them. Lust whispers, if I can just have her, I'll be whole. But the soul knows, if I can just come home to myself, I won't need to chase. And that's the beginning of real masculine power. Not repression, not avoidance, but awareness. The man who can feel his lust without being ruled by it is the man who holds true authority, because lust isn't the enemy. It's the unprocessed past showing up in the present, asking to be made whole. Most men run from it. The conscious man listens, and when he does, something radical happens. He stops looking for women to heal him. He starts loving women as they are, not as projections of his pain or fantasies. He brings presence instead of performance, clarity instead of chaos, depth instead of demand, because now he knows who he is. And when a man knows who he is, lust doesn't control him. It serves him as a reminder of life's beauty, not as a prison for his unconscious wounds. And if this content is making sense to you, then click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. Let's go one level deeper, because we're not done yet. There's a darker aspect of lust we haven't touched. It's the part that doesn't want love. It doesn't want intimacy. It wants domination, control, ego. This is the lust that turns women into trophies, that keeps score, that brags and compares and consumes. And this is not lust at all. It's insecurity with a leather jacket on. Jung would say this form of lust is driven by a wound so deep, it no longer seeks to connect, only to conquer. And this is the moment we must ask, are we really desiring the person in front of us, or just trying to avoid feeling powerless again? That's the great confrontation, and if you're brave enough to face it, to pause the chase, to breathe through the pull, you'll realize something sacred. Lust is not evil. It's misdirected energy. It's life force with no guide. It's your creative fire, unclaimed, unmanaged, and misunderstood. Jung said, where love rules, there is no will to power, and where power predominates, their love is lacking. So now ask yourself, is your lust rooted in love or in power? And what would it look like to reclaim that energy not through others, but through your own inner union? Most people don't realize this. Lust is not just about the body. It's about the psyche's longing for completion. Carl Jung believed that every man carries within him an anima, the feminine part of his soul. And every woman carries an animus, the masculine within her. But most men have never met their anima, so they look for her in women, in curves, in glances, in the thrill of being desired. But this isn't love. It's projection. You're not falling for her. You're falling for the parts of yourself you've lost, the warmth you never received, the creativity you suppressed, the intimacy you were never taught how to hold. And that's why lust becomes addiction, because the anima is not a woman. She is your mirror. She is the gateway to your wholeness. But when you don't know her internally, you chase her externally. And no matter how many women you touch, you still feel empty, because what you're really craving is your own soul. This is the quiet heartbreak of modern masculinity. We've turned lust into a goal, a scoreboard, a performance metric. But Jung would say, lust is a teacher, a guide, a path into the depths of who you are. If you listen closely, it will show you your wounds, your shame, your unmet hunger, your fear of intimacy, not to shame you, but to liberate you, because lust only becomes dangerous when it's unconscious. That's the core of Jung's work. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life, and you will call it fate. So many men believe they're doomed, addicted, hopelessly wired for lust. But the truth is, you're not doomed. You're dissociated from your own softness, from your grief, from your power that isn't performative, but grounded. And when you come back into contact with that, your lust transforms. It stops being a weapon. It becomes wisdom. You begin to discern the difference between attraction and projection, between craving and connection, between a fantasy and a feeling. You realize that the most powerful men in the world aren't the ones who get the most women. They're the ones who no longer chase approval through desire. They've integrated. Their lust doesn't dominate them. It deepens them, because they've met the woman within, and now they can meet the woman in front of them. And here's the tragedy. Most men will never get this far. They'll stay trapped in loops of shame, of porn, of performative relationships where nobody is really seen, because they were never taught that desire is sacred, that it's not something to fear or fight, but to understand. Your lust is trying to tell you something, and if you ignore it, repress it, or numb it, it will control you in more dangerous ways. Jung didn't want you to become celibate. He wanted you to become aware, because with awareness comes choice. You can choose to chase the high or choose to sit with the low. You can choose to distract, or choose to descend, to meet the part of you that's terrified of real love. Because real love doesn't give you a script to follow. It asks you to reveal yourself, fully, messily, tenderly, and that kind of vulnerability scares the shadow. So instead, it chooses lust. Because lust feels powerful. You don't have to be seen. You just have to perform. But the soul, it wants to be seen. And that's why lust always leaves you hollow. Because it gave your body a thrill, but left your heart untouched. Real masculine power is learning to sit in that hollowness, not to escape it, but to understand it, to ask, what part of me is trying to speak through this desire? What am I really aching for beneath the fantasy? What wound is asking to be held? These questions don't make you weak, they make you dangerous, because the man who knows his wounds cannot be manipulated by them. He is no longer a slave to his lust, he is sovereign, and from that place, he doesn't chase women, he attracts depth, because he radiates clarity, presence, truth, and there is nothing more seductive than that. This is what Jung meant by individuation, becoming whole, not perfect, whole. And to be whole, you must reclaim every part of you that you've lost to performance. That includes your lust, not as shame, not as a sin, but as a message, a call back to yourself, a reminder that the fire in you was never meant to destroy, but to illuminate, to guide you home. Let's go deeper now, because if you're still here, you're not just curious, you're ready to remember. Jung didn't isolate lust as a separate problem. He viewed it as one of the many faces of the shadow. And here's the thing most people misunderstand. Your shadow doesn't just hold your bad parts. It holds your unlived potential, your repressed passion, your rejected truths. So when you push away lust, you don't get rid of it. You drive it underground. You give it power in the dark. That's when it becomes destructive. That's when it takes over in secret. That's when it leaks out in places you swore it wouldn't. Because whatever you repress controls you. Until you make peace with your fire, you will keep burning your own life down just to feel something. And here's where Jung was so different from modern psychology. He didn't want to tame you. He wanted you to transform. He didn't believe in erasing desire. He believed in integrating it. To him, lust wasn't evil. It was primal, necessary, but dangerous only when left unconscious. And that's the invitation, not to deny your desires, but to decode them. Because your lust is a message in disguise. And it's usually not saying, I want sex. It's saying, I want to be wanted. I want to feel alive. I want to be powerful. I want to be held. I want to stop performing. And those are beautiful human longings. But when you don't know how to sit with them, you outsource them to fantasy. You chase beauty, hoping it will fix your shame. You chase validation, hoping it will fill your silence. You chase bodies, hoping they'll touch your soul. But they can't, because no one can complete a man who is split from himself. That's why lust hurts more than it heals. Because it promises connection, but it delivers escape. And escape never leads to wholeness. It leads to repetition. The same patterns, the same emptiness, the same regret. And deep down, you know this. But let's be honest. Healing this part of you isn't easy. It means looking at the places where you felt unchosen. It means confronting the fear that you are unworthy without being desired. It means grieving the versions of yourself you've performed just to feel loved. That's not weak. That's warrior work. It's the work of reclaiming your heart from the shadows. And this is where your power is reborn. Because the man who can hold his lust without suppressing it, without indulging it, but simply seeing it, becomes untouchable. He is no longer pulled by every curve, no longer controlled by every fantasy, no longer addicted to being desired. He desires with awareness. He connects with depth. He loves without needing to be needed, because he knows where his power comes from. And it's not in conquering others, but in knowing himself. So what do you do with this fire? You consecrate it. You stop seeing it as a curse and start honoring it as a compass. You ask, what would it look like to channel this desire into creativity? What would it feel like to turn my lust into presence? How would my relationships change if I stopped performing? Because when you no longer need to be consumed, you become the flame others gather around. That is erotic power, not manipulation, not conquest, but embodiment. You radiate something that can't be faked, something that isn't loud, but impossible to ignore. A man at peace with his hunger is more powerful than one who's always chasing it. And, ironically, that's when real connection begins. Because now, you're not coming from lack, you're coming from overflow. You're not trying to fill a void, you're offering presence. You're not chasing touch, you're offering depth. And that changes everything. This is why Jung's work still resonates. Because he didn't just help people cope, he helped them return to themselves, to their instincts, to their soul. He reminded us that the path to wholeness isn't sterile. It's messy. It's raw. It includes your rage, your lust, your grief, and your shame. But only when you walk through them do you become who you truly are. Not a version of yourself filtered through fear, but a man reborn through integration. This is what makes you magnetic, not your appearance, not your bank account, not your charm, but your depth. Because in a world of superficiality, depth is revolutionary. Presence is rare. Awareness is sacred. Wholeness is irresistible. So the next time lust rises in you, don't run, don't numb, don't judge. Listen. It's not here to ruin you. It's here to reveal you. It's the knock at the door you've been ignoring, but it holds the key. And once you answer it, everything changes. There's something no one tells you about lust. It's not about the other person. It's about the part of you you're trying to awaken. Think about that. Why are you magnetized by someone who's emotionally unavailable? Why does a certain look, scent, or voice completely unhinge your self-control? It's not just chemistry. It's projection. You don't fall for them. You fall for what they represent in you. Maybe they symbolize freedom you've denied yourself. Maybe they radiate confidence you secretly crave. Maybe they carry a wildness you buried long ago. And this is where Jung's concept of the anima and animus comes in. In every man, Jung said, there's a hidden feminine part. The anima. She's the emotional, intuitive, mysterious force within. In every woman, there's the animus, the assertive, rational, directive energy. When you're disconnected from your own anima, you start projecting her onto women around you. You see her not as part of you, but as something they must complete. And now, lust becomes obsession, attraction becomes dependency, desire becomes worship, not of them, but of the forgotten part of you. That's why it hurts so much when they leave. It's not just heartbreak. It's the collapse of your projected identity. You're not losing them. You're losing the illusion that they made you whole. And the only way out is in. You must retrieve what you gave away. The sensitivity, the imagination, the power, the mystery. Not from someone else, but from within. This is Jung's invitation. Stop chasing your anima in other people. Start integrating her inside, because until you do, every lover will be a mirror of your exile. Let's take this deeper. If your lust is unconscious, you will always be in survival mode. You'll be looking for the next fix, not because you want pleasure, but because you're afraid of silence. You fear stillness, because stillness reveals truth. And the truth is, you've been seducing the world to avoid seducing yourself. You've been craving skin because you're terrified of soul. You want to be held, but you fear being seen. And that contradiction is the wound. That's the inner war. But here's the paradox. The moment you stop chasing, you start attracting, because you've turned inward. You've become the source, not the seeker. Now, your presence carries something different. It's not neediness. It's not manipulation. It's not strategy. It's sovereignty. And people feel it. They don't know why they're drawn to you. They just are. Because real power doesn't announce itself. It emanates. So, how do you get there? How do you stop being ruled by lust and start being fueled by it? Jung's answer was simple, but not easy. Know yourself completely, not just the light, but the shadow, the shame, the rage, the need. Look at the parts of you you've labeled as unlovable and realize they're not weaknesses, they're keys. Every compulsion is a map. Every addiction is a doorway. Every lustful fantasy is a coded message from your deeper self. Not to be shamed, but to be translated. What are you truly craving? Connection? Freedom? Vitality? Aliveness? Find that, and give it to yourself before you go seeking it in someone else's body. Because the man who meets his own needs doesn't manipulate others into filling them. That's integrity. That's evolution. This is why the spiritual path often feels lonely. Because when you stop numbing with lust, when you stop running from the silence, when you face your own hunger, you realize most people aren't ready to meet you there. They want your image, not your depth. They want your performance, not your presence. And it hurts, but it also liberates. Because now, you're not seduced by attention. You're guided by truth. And truth doesn't need an audience. It only needs alignment. So let the silence refine you. Let the solitude reveal you. Let the fire of unmet desire become fuel for self-remembering. This is the path of the awakened masculine. Not soft, not passive, but profoundly grounded. He holds his lust without needing to express it. He feels attraction without becoming a slave to it. He honors beauty without chasing it. He walks into a room, not seeking validation, but radiating clarity. And in that clarity, others feel safe to drop their masks too, because your wholeness gives them permission to remember theirs. That's the alchemy. And if you've made it this far, you already know. This isn't about repression, it's about redirection. Your lust was never the problem. Your disconnection was, and now, you're waking up. Let's talk about what happens when you actually reclaim your lust. Not reject it, not shame it, but integrate it. Because when you do, you stop being reactive and start becoming magnetic. You no longer need to chase validation, because you're no longer split inside. You've unified the parts of yourself that you used to scatter into other people. That old ache, that desperation to be chosen, that pull toward the unavailable person, it starts to dissolve. Why? Because you've stopped outsourcing your power. You've stopped making someone else the gatekeeper of your worth. This is what Jung meant when he spoke of individuation, the process of becoming whole. And for most men, Lust is the final, hardest test of that wholeness, because it's not just physical, it's symbolic. It represents the deepest wound, the boy who was never seen, the man who never felt enough, the soul that's been waiting for home. And lust, at its core, is a cry for reunion, not with another, but with your forgotten self. So what does this look like in real life? It looks like saying no, not because you're scared, but because you're clear. It looks like walking away from beauty. That's wrapped in chaos. It looks like choosing peace over drama that feels like passion. It looks like knowing the difference between real intimacy and trauma bonding. You stop chasing the highs. You stop feeding the cycles. You stop mistaking intensity for love, because you've seen the pattern. You've seen how lust can become a cage when it's confused with connection, and now you refuse to go back to sleep. You want real, not fireworks, not fantasy, just real. Here's a truth most people aren't ready to hear. You cannot create sacred union while you are still addicted to the thrill of the chase. Because sacred union isn't found in the adrenaline, it's found in the anchoring. It's not found in how fast your heart races, but in how deeply your nervous system settles. If your idea of attraction still requires emotional chaos and mixed signals, you're still in the trance. You're not in love. You're in survival mode. And until you heal that, you'll keep calling lust destiny and trauma chemistry. This is why the work is sacred, because it asks you to feel things you've spent your whole life avoiding, to look at your lust and see it as a compass, not a chain. To understand that desire isn't something to be ashamed of, it's something to be translated. What is it really pointing to? A part of you that wants to be known? A truth you're afraid to claim? A version of yourself that's waiting to be born? Desire is never random. It's a mirror, and when you learn how to read it, you stop being its victim and start being its master. This is the shift. You no longer need to act on every impulse, because you're not scared of the energy anymore. You can sit with it, breathe through it, let it move through your body, without needing to be released in self-betrayal. This is emotional mastery. This is nervous system regulation. This is spiritual power. And most people never get here because they never pause long enough to feel what's underneath the urge. But you're not most people. You're here. You're listening. And you're ready. And if this content is making sense to you, then click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. Let's keep going, because once you've reclaimed your lust, something even more beautiful begins to emerge. You stop being hypnotized by surface. You start feeling energy. You don't fall for someone because of their looks. You fall for the stillness in their gaze, the presence in their voice, the congruence in their actions. You're no longer chasing a fantasy. You're seeking resonance. And here's the ironic twist. That's when they start chasing you, because you've become rare. You're not desperate. You're not performing. You're not pretending. You're grounded. You're clear. You're whole. And in a world full of fragments, that's magnetic, not just sexually, but spiritually. So if you're still struggling with lust, with the pull of temptation, with the ache of wanting something you know isn't good for you, here's your invitation. Don't fight it. Don't feed it. Face it. Sit with it like it's a guest. Ask it why it came. Ask it what it wants you to remember. And listen, because underneath the craving, there's a message. And when you hear it, really hear it, you won't need the craving anymore. You'll have the clarity, the self-possession, the return. That's the true power, not in how many people you can seduce, but in how deeply you can sit with your own desire, without needing anyone to solve it for you. That's the new standard. That's the beginning of freedom. So here we are. Lust no longer as enemy, but as initiation. You've seen its shadow. You've heard its voice. You've stopped running from it and started listening to it. And maybe now, for the first time, you realize something quietly profound. Lust was never the problem. It was the messenger, the flare sent up by your unconscious, trying to tell you where you've abandoned yourself, trying to show you where you still think love must be earned through pain, where you still confuse attention with affection, where you still seek permission to feel powerful, alive, and wanted. But here's the deeper truth. You don't need anyone's permission to be whole. You never did. And the second you understand that, the spell breaks, the grip loosens, the need evaporates. You no longer look at the person you were obsessed with and feel unworthy. You look and feel neutral, clear, free, not because they changed, but because you did. You became the one who validates yourself, the one who sits with your hunger, without needing to outsource it. That's what real power is. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Lust is part of that unconscious. It's not evil. It's not shameful. It's just unexamined. And when you do examine it, without judgment, without fear, you begin to see how much of your life has been shaped by this one emotion. The choices you made, the people you chased, the things you sacrificed, the betrayals you endured, the truths you silenced, all because something deep in you said, "If I can just have this, I'll finally be enough." But you were always enough. You just forgot. And lust was never your path to worth, only your mirror. So what now? Now, you live differently. You make choices from self-respect, not self-abandonment. You notice when the pull returns, and you pause. You ask, is this love? Or is this a familiar ache dressed up as chemistry? You begin to distinguish attraction from addiction. And in doing so, you give yourself a kind of freedom most people never taste, because most people stay trapped in cycles of craving and collapse. They confuse chaos with connection. They chase highs and call it love. They fear being alone. So they attach to what hurts, but not you. You're learning the art of stillness. You're learning how to hold yourself when the craving rises, how to listen without reacting, how to desire without losing yourself. And this is the real spiritual awakening, not the crystals, not the quotes, not the detachment, but the raw, everyday courage to meet your most compulsive urges with presence, to face the thing you used to run from and say, "I see you, I hear you, but I no longer obey you." That's alchemy. That's transformation. That's the kind of healing that can't be faked, because it's felt in your body, in your breath, in the quiet choices you make. When no one's watching, you stop chasing, you stop proving, you stop trying to seduce the world into loving you. You just are whole, enough, already chosen. And from that place, lust becomes something sacred, not something to conquer you, but something you can channel, transmute, create from. You take the same fire that used to burn you and let it light your path instead. So if you've made it this far, if you're still here, still listening, then something in you is waking up. You're remembering. And maybe that's all this video was ever meant to be. Not an answer, not a lesson, but a mirror, a quiet moment of reflection. so you could stop confusing your desires with your identity. You are not your lust. You are the awareness that watches it rise and chooses something higher, something truer, something that doesn't leave you emptier after the high fades. This is the return to yourself, and it's only just beginning. If this resonated, take a moment to subscribe. Drop a comment below, not for the algorithm, but to mark this chapter in your journey. If you made it this far, you're not just watching, you're remembering, returning, reclaiming your inner ground. So trust that the video YouTube shows you next, the one appearing now, is not random. It's the next doorway, the next layer, and it will meet you exactly where you are. We'll see you in the next depth. Depthoria continues.